Okie pokey weirdos, I'm Rev, and usually this is my world of cosplay shenaniganery. But because it is Elvis Presley's birthday on the day that I am uploading this, January 8th, 2025, making him 90 years old, I thought I'd do something a little special. Let's get spooky! I initially found this ghost story through a YouTuber reading off from a Reddit that had been ripped from a Facebook post, something to that effect. However, I have also gotten to hear the story from the original person who experienced this. So I will tell you the story and then include my own personal little tidbit at the end. It was a warm Memphis evening in 1987. There was a couple driving down Main Street heading home after a day of running errands. And then they saw a man dressed in uniform walking alongside the road. Everyone else kept driving past him, so they pulled over and asked him if he wanted a ride. He took them up on the offer, but when he told them the address of the place that he was going, they didn't automatically recognize the street. So he gave them the street names nearby and they started heading that direction. While driving, they were talking to him, asking him about his life, and he was asking them about theirs. The odd thing was, he never told them his name. The couple never thought to ask. Once the husband had finished following all the instructions for driving through town, they ended up sitting right out front the gate to Graceland. And the wife goes, "Oh honey, I think you're playing with us. This is not your home." But suddenly, that boy is not in the back seat anymore. They didn't even hear him open the door. He's standing directly outside the gate waving, going, "Bye, thank you!" And he walked through the gate. He did not open the gate. He walked through it. The couple are going, "Okay, that was odd," and go home. From that point, the story online kind of cuts off. Time to get to my personal experience with this story. I've personally been to Graceland twice, one time because the history of rock and roll through that whole city was on my bucket list. The second time was because I got a free ticket. So the second time I went, I was walking through the main merch shop, the one that's on the right of the entrance to the main museum building. And a quick fact about me, I see dead people. Not so much Sixth Sense jump scare kind of dead people, but more the intro to Paranorman kind of dead people, because they're off living their own afterlife while the living humans get to continue living their lives and most people not noticing them. Graceland is actually a very old property, and EP and his family were one of the very many families who have lived on that property over the years, as well as people who have lived within Memphis over the years. So it is a very busy place, especially within the realm of spiritual beings. You could say I was a little overloaded. With that groundwork down, while I was in the main merch shop, they have these giant glass windows surrounding the whole outside of the shop. So when I was looking at a very shiny thing on the sidewalk just outside that window, I noticed a little ghost boy in blue overalls standing outside the window making faces and screwing around, looking at me. So I made faces at him and he giggled and smiled and ran off. After the little ghost boy ran away, this old woman who was behind me putting clothing on the racks went, "Oh, you can see them too!" And I went, yeah. So smooth, right? Most people think me odd for making faces at people and things that are not there, but thankfully this woman actually could tell what was going on. Then she explained how she sees entities quite often herself, and it's part of the reason why she started working at Graceland. I asked her, "Oh really? What do you mean by that?" And she went to tell me this story of a soldier walking down the street during the summer in '87, and her husband picking him up and taking him home. And I went, "Wait a minute, I think I've heard this one." And when I finished up the story for her, she went, "Oh, "You heard of this? How do you know about this?" And so I explained that it was probably a YouTube video that ripped off a Reddit thread that ripped off a Facebook post. And she went, "Oh, I did post that on Facebook like a decade ago." So she and I continued talking, getting into more detail about the story. She told me about how she and her husband never really thought to ask him his name, especially since they automatically started talking about his family. He was talking about how his mom had passed and how much he loved his dad, and he was so excited to get home to his dogs. And when he had gotten into the car, they felt the weight of the car shift. So they thought they had an actual person in the back of the car. This guy was also wearing a hat, so they couldn't see his face as easily. She also told me that they could feel the grip of his hands as he was pulling himself forward over the car seat to be able to talk to them at either side. He also mentioned how he had been in Germany and that it had been snowing there. So the couple were intrigued because it was summer in Memphis, and they're like, "Oh, snow? That must have been cold. Pretty big difference coming back to Memphis and it being extremely hot." Lastly, what she told me that was not in the Facebook post was that when she and her husband got home, they're kind of still baffled by the fact that they brought a ghost to Graceland. They hadn't yet realized who they had brought to Graceland. And then her husband thought about it for a second and went, "Wait. Didn't that boy look a little familiar?" And then he ran over to a bookshelf, pulled out a musician history book, and opened it to the page, a picture of Elvis in about the late 50s. And both of them went, "Oh, that's him!" It was then that they realized that they brought Elvis's ghost back to Graceland. This woman said that she was 83 years old and she'd been working at Graceland ever since she figured out that she'd brought Elvis's ghost home, saying that the experience inspired her somehow to go to this place and work there. And ever since, she says she has had amazing interactions with people, similarly to how she got to talk to me, where you get to go back and forth with someone on something that you absolutely love. The culture of fandom. No matter if you're a fan of anime, paranormal, or musicians, or anything else that you can create a fandom with. Now I know this could be an issue with some old person having read something on the internet and then taking the story on as their own. But I really hope that's not the case. I'd like to think that I met the actual woman of the couple who experienced this, as well as knowing that more people have experienced it, because I've seen stories written up where this happened in the 90s and also the early 2000s. But from what I know, the first experience of this was in the late 80s, and it's kind of cool that I got to meet someone who said they got to experience something like that and gave me more details on the story. And no matter what you believe in, invalidating people's experiences is a very not nice thing to do. So please remember those subs, comms, thumbs, and a ding. Be nice in the comments, and you can come back here to join me for more cosplay shenaniganery the next time around that I'm making a costume, because I do plan to recreate some of Elvis's outfits later on, as well as plenty of other fandoms. I have a whole bunch of things in my brain. I give everybody options of what they may want to see, because I have so many ideas, I don't always know what I want to do. I greatly appreciate it if you support me on Ko-fi or Patreon, or you can always just hang out on YouTube with us here. And welcome to the madness. Graceland is actually a very old pop. Let us begin. Or completely gone. Brain, thoughts, no more.